Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com. Kirby Smart, for those of you that are not college football fanatics like, well, you kind of sort of are, aren't you? I know Don is.
Not a fanatic, but I enjoy watching football. It's good for my nap time.
Yeah. Yeah, it puts you to sleep.
It does.
Yeah. Her husband, Don, he's a Florida Gator, so I'm an OU Sooner fan. But Kirby Smart is a terrific college football coach in Georgia. And some years ago, I came across 3 costs of leadership that he talks about. And he worked for Nick Saban at Alabama, who even non-football people know about. But these were really interesting to me because being long in the tooth as I am, I'm much older than Kirby is. And I'm like, yeah, this is completely right. And here are his 3 costs of leadership. Number 1, you will have to make decisions, hard decisions, that negatively affect people you care about. 2, you will be disliked despite your best attempts to do the best for the most. And 3, you will be misunderstood and you won't always have the opportunity to defend yourself. And I know that rings true for you too, because Lisa and I obviously huddle about a lot of stuff. Let's start with the first one. You have to make hard decisions that negatively affect people you care about. I would spin that or tweak it ever so slightly. And they could be decisions that do negatively affect people, but they could be decisions that people feel negatively affect them.
And I think it comes down, for me, it's, you have to make those decisions and it's the words that you use that negatively affect people. It's not, sometimes the decisions are best for the organization, best for the department at that time, best for the project. And there's moments it's going to negatively affect people. But when you look at the full scope of why you're making that decision, and if you put thought into the necessity of it, and is it value added? In other words, does it present something good on the outcome? You have to make those decisions sometimes. And I faced that over the years when we had, reorganizations. When I had to look at a better way to do business, it almost comes down to people don't like change. If they're used to something and you want them to do something different, it could be the hours that they're working. In our case with COVID, and I'm sure every organization out there, we had people working from home. They didn't want to, once they experienced it, they didn't want to come back into the office. And that was a necessity of business. It was it was something our city manager believed in. We needed to be present with taxpayer dollars. And it was a change and a shift. And to this day, it's years later and we're still getting questions of why can't we work from home? So there's things that do impact people, whether they choose to embrace it and trust your why that you've explained. Because I know I explain myself. I always try to give them the reason I'm making the decision. It's up to them whether they can choose to live with that or not, and if they agree with it or not. And if in their core they don't agree with it, I always tell them, listen, that is what we're doing here. We feel it is best for the city and the department. And I always put, it's me. I don't name drop, saying, well, Bill wants this, or Steve wants this, or Tom wants this, or
blame a higher up.
Yeah, I just say this is what we need to do. We are using taxpayer dollars. We need to be present when they're here and present for one another. And that was not a popular decision. And I had people really upset and some people left over it. But that is their choice and I supported them. If that's what you need and that's what makes you, that's better for you or your family, then find somewhere that finds you're happy. If that's not here, but here is what we require. And I need you all in. I don't want to keep hearing about it over and over and over. We have to learn to live with it and move on.
Yeah. And I think we have to, as leaders, I think we have to respect people's right to make a decision, to make their own decision.
Of course.
And that decision may not be the one you want them to make.
Right.
Because you're thinking about, what's best for you and maybe what you think is best for the team, but it's their life. They get a vote. Number 2, you will be disliked despite your best attempts to do the best for the most. And I think that last part is important because clearly there are decisions to get made, to point number 1, that may individually, they may negatively impact a person or an individual. It could be a permanent impact. It could cost them their job. It
Sure.
could be short-term pain. We got to work a whole bunch of hours for, this project or whatever. You'll be disliked despite your best attempts to do the best for the most.
Yeah, it's really hard. So often in leadership, you truly are an eagle, flying alone. We don't want to, that is not the place we always want to be, but leadership does require sometimes that we are out there making decisions people don't like. I know for me, and I know for many others, we do have our department's best interest at heart. We have the majority of the people. We have the city, others that we know we're making that decision for a reason. But that doesn't mean there's always going to be agreement with that decision, and we're not going to be popular. And I'm okay not to be popular. I just have to, I always used to say at the end of the day, I need to be able to sleep at night. Did I do what's right? And if I'm not liked today, if I'm misunderstood or people are making assumptions and didn't clarify, that's really on them. But at the same time, you taught me I have to be able to tell the story, that if there may be misperceptions that I'm feeling exist, there may be a need to tell the story better. So maybe not directly to them if that's not warranted. I mean, I'm never afraid to go just approach somebody and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing. I just wanted to clarify. An example to that point, I remember when you and I were first working together, and I called myself, I said, I'm a taskmaster. And we had a lot of discussions around that. And you said, what does that, define that? And I said, well, I get it done. If somebody needs me to get something done, I'm the one you can depend on to get it done. And you said, that's a completely different definition than what you just said. That's a different perception than people. When you say a taskmaster, they're going to think you're non-strategic. Kind of, and we had that wasn't your exact words, but that was this evolving conversation over several weeks that you need to tell a different story. Don't use that word again because you're defining and limiting yourself in the view of others, kind of. And it really made me think of what I thought. It was always such a positive that I'm going to get her done kind of girl. But your point was so valid. I was like, yeah, that is not how I want to be perceived. Nor is that really how I am. I'm very strategic, but I'm also can be tactical and help the team get to a tactical approach to make sure we're thinking of impact, but also getting it done well and right. And I call it closing all the loop, making sure if we make a change, did we make the process change in the background? Did we update the system? Did we make forms match? Did we go back in the handbook? I mean, there's all these things you want to close that loop. And so it was really helpful in that aspect. To that point, the team didn't like it. When I made a decision, the team didn't want to have to go to that extra effort at the time, but they understood it. So I was not really popular as I have to make changes like that. In that case, it was affecting me as to the taskmaster. But other decisions that I would make, I was not always the popular kid in the room. But like I said, at the end of the day, I could sleep at night knowing I did the right thing. I told them the why. How they choose to believe that was up to them. And the impact, it was negative at times, but it was for a good purpose. And it was moving us forward. And they either need to come on the journey or they need to find somewhere else. Again, same thing. Find your happy if it's not with us, but we have to evolve with the times. And that's critical.
Every good parent, every great parent has a willingness to be disliked by their kids.
Yeah.
I don't mean ongoing, chronically, but you got to be willing to endure those moments where the kids ain't happy with your decision, because your decision hopefully is made from a perspective of greater wisdom and insight. And it's the same thing at work. But it leads to number 3, which may be the most difficult one of them all. You will be misunderstood and you won't always have the opportunity to defend yourself.
That's always hard because that's typically perspective. That's people forming opinions that often they may not have vetted. Usually it's from a distance. They've heard something and they're taking that as the truth. I've seen all of those things over my 30-year career here. Even I had 4 years in private sector. It's no different. Like, this is just the story of time and human nature. People make assumptions and beliefs. And there is, no matter how good of a person you are, no matter how great of a leader you are, no matter how great of a parent you are, a grandparent, somebody is going to think something about you. You know, look at, we always hear when we're in the grocery store with our young toddlers and they're throwing an absolute conniption fit. And you know, people are just looking at you like, why can't she control that child? What a horrible mother. Or you spank your child, or you do something and somebody else immediately judges you without knowing anything about you. And that's just, to me, that's just life and human nature. It's easy to judge. It's hard to get to know and understand. So
the difficulty with leaders is, you know, we're not always able to provide the understanding as much as we would like to, as much as we would love to pull the curtain back on some decisions. And I don't know about you, but for me, as I think back over it, it's not always that it's for their best that they be kind of in the dark.
Sure.
It's just expedient. And sometimes, yes, it can be political, because many decisions are complicated. You know, they involve a lot of folks, and for leaders especially that have to manage up and down and sideways, which includes most of us, there's just so many factors at play. And as much as we preach the leadership recipe, which a big component of that is understanding, you just can't always provide it. Every decision just doesn't allow us, it does not afford us the luxury to just pull the curtain back and shell it all down, which could be a defense for ourselves. For me, it's made easier because the opportunity to defend yourself is about you and it's not about them. The times that I get frustrated is when I know they are frustrated and it would help them if I could share more details, but I just can't. You just can't.
Sometimes you can't. And sometimes, you know, I think in city government, we're also in unique positions. Sometimes, maybe I didn't work long enough in public sector and far enough out in my career to know if they have the same issues, but you could
in
tell
private,
us that,
you
Randy.
mean?
But you know, so many of the times we all have a city council. We are at the will of our city council to implement what they like to see done, what their vision is. And sometimes as leaders, you know, you may not always agree with what they're asking you to do. It's not illegal. It's not immoral. It's not unethical. It's just different. It's just a different perspective. Those are sometimes what I find, and that's one example with council. You get the same thing. You may have a leader that wants something and their leader says, yeah, just get it done. You know, just get it done for them. This is minor in the scheme of things. But your team may have a significant challenge with that. And like you said, this is not a time, I will try to explain that, hey, we are at the will of council. We work on their behalf and they are working on behalf of our citizens. And if this is what they want to implement, we're going to implement it. You know, we need to follow that direction and really make our department shine in that aspect. And it always goes up. I want to make you shine. You're going to make me shine. I want to make my boss shine. I want to make the city manager shine. And I want the council to be pleased with what we produce in the example of a council. But that is what's before us. And it's so hard for some people to understand because they're like, just say no. Well, it is not that easy. You may not understand the levels of engagement and involvement. To just say no is not a viable option, nor is it smart. You just don't want to do that. We are in a position in leadership, the further up the food chain you go, you have to be strategic and identify what can we do, how can we best do this, and how can we manage it at our level, not that they have to see what we've done or how we've done it, to make sure we're still not being so inconsistent it's visible. If it's something extraordinary they want us to do or special for somebody they know or a citizen that's complaining or things like that. And I always tell them, wouldn't you rather be able to handle that issue in a manner that fits what they're asking us to do, but also complies with your internal rules and regulations so we can track those? And then maybe we can look at that down the road and see if there's a better way to improve this to limit that from happening in the future. But we're still in control of parts of it, just not all of it. And council is one example because they're working on behalf, in our case, of 200,000 citizens, right? They have a group to please too because they're voted in. But there are many other cases I'm sure our listeners can come up with. It could be a family issue. It does not just work. It could be you're doing something that the family disagrees with and you had to make a choice. They don't know why you had to do that. Anytime you have strife in the family, if you have disagreements at work, all of those play an exact same part as you had to make a decision that you had to make for your reasons. Not everybody's going to understand that. Not everybody's going to agree with you, but that's the decision you made, and that's the consequences we live with.
I think all of Kirby's things, and I'll end my part on this note. And just to recap, 1, you will have to make hard decisions that negatively affect people you care about. 2, you will be disliked despite your best attempts to do the best for the most. And 3, you will be misunderstood and you won't always have the opportunity to defend yourself. To me, they all just speak of the real central theme of courage that's required to be a good, effective leader. I get asked all the time about, are leaders born? Are they this? Are they that? And what are the common denominators? And we typically get hung up, at least the questioners to me, get kind of hung up on style and personality. And my experience has not proven that those are much at play. They're all different kinds of personalities that are great leaders, and some of them are very, very different. But the one thing that I keep coming back to that they all have in common is they aren't cowards. They're all courageous. They're all willing to pay these prices and other prices to be good at leading people. And I don't think it matters if you're soft-spoken or if you're boisterous. I don't think it matters if you're an introvert or an extrovert. I don't think it matters if you're a person of few words or if you're a person of many words. But if you've got the courage to pay these kinds of prices, then I think you've got the stuff to be a good leader.
Yes, I agree with you, Randy. Courage is key. As you look at everything, you and I have talked for years on what is your ideal outcome? What is it that we were trying to achieve as a team on the issue at hand? And in order to do that, sometimes you have to have the courage to make the decision in the moment that not the entire team doesn't agree with. You have to look at the ideal outcome. Is it in the best interest of the department and the city? And then you have to be transparent and be able to tell your team with candidness and understanding that this is why we have to do this to make it a difference in what we're doing. And that is the decision we make today, and you stand by it. At the end of the day, it is what you have to do in order to lead and not just manage. And that's what's important.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, the City Government Leadership Podcast. Our website is growgreat.com. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. We hope you'll subscribe to the show, and we hope you'll tell a friend.